What exactly is depression when you think about it? We've all heard of it, and even more of us struggle with depression every single day. For so many, it's very paralyzing, not to mention life disrupting. What does the Bible even say about depression? I know off the top, I remember a scripture that basically says that we are to put on the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. Is there an answer for those who struggle in this way? Do I have to struggle with this for the rest of my life? Do I have to take medicine for the rest of my life? Is there anything practical that I should be doing? What about diet? What about the way that I think? Well, today we have a special guest who is a holistic nutritionist, an author, a sociologist, a former fitness instructor, and someone who has conducted thousands of assessments. And the answers given in these assessments led her to write a book entitled Defeating Depression Allegedly. Let's welcome her and tune in. Welcome to Truths to Live By, and I am Juanita Price. I am super excited today to have with me author,
You can
soci
add that to the list now.
yeah, author, sociologist. I call her serial entrepreneur, Nikita Thomas. I'm actually going to read just a little bit, and then maybe she can kind of come in when she talks to tell a little bit more about maybe what I didn't say. And so, Nikita Thomas, as I've already said, she is a sociologist. She is, which is going to be pretty much a part of the subject of today, and it shows her credibility as an author and everything that that does rather. She's a sociologist. She is a certified, credentialed, holistic nutritionist. She is, and she'll tell you a little bit more about this, the founder of God's Green Earth RX, God's Green Earth RX, which is a plant based apothecary that specializes in the treatment of chronic illnesses. She is also the owner of Rooted. To tell you a little bit about an apothecary, a term that many may not be familiar with, is that actual doctors, yes, physicians actually turn to apothecaries many times, to acquire medicine, supplements, that sort of thing. And so I introduce you to her today, and I just open up the floor. Nikita, did I miss anything? And is there anything maybe you want to add to your introduction that I may not have covered?
Nothing besides fun stuff. I can't think of anything. I'm the worst person to talk about myself. It's very hard to, and sometimes I forget things too. Just
Right.
like I did do that, but I was very proud of the Arthur one because for about 11 years, it's actually still on there. I had a reminder set on my phone to write a book, and it's still there. Every day at 9 a.m., an alarm goes off on my phone that says, write mental health book. So I think that's up there with the things that I'm most proud of. But everything else, like you kind of just keep working and put your head down. So I don't necessarily remember everything. I did personal training for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else? They're trying to add chef to my name. They're definitely trying to do that now with Rooted, the vegan restaurant. So everyone wants to call me a chef.
Right.
I'm just like, I do not want any of these titles. I'm not a fan of titles. Don't give me no
Right.
title. Just
Right.
let me work.
Absolutely.
Worker. Put
I
that. Nikita E. Thomas. Worker,
worker.
servant. Leave me
Yep.
alone.
I knew you were going to say that, worker slash servant. I love that. Now, would you say that it took you this long to write the book because of being busy, or do you kind of believe, though, that in some maybe big way that it was more about the timing, which then sort of carved out the release and the writing of the book? What would you say?
I think that I, like many people who decided to write a book, have started and kind of veered off and haven't been able to put a cohesive piece of material together. And so you kind of toy with all of the ideas of how to write a book and, you know,
Mm,
do I write out chapters? Do I do this? And I basically think I overanalyze myself into doing nothing, which I think a
right,
lot of people do, is
right.
it's kind of like you overthink something until you do nothing.
Hmm.
Um, and I did that for years, and I think a lot of people tend to do that for years. It's
Right.
thinking that you have to have the steps and you have to have the whatever. And then one day I decided to not only do it, but I set a deadline. I said I will finish this by, and I gave myself a specific date. I gave myself a specific topic.
Hmm.
I stuck to it. And I could be very absent-minded and scatterbrained.
Hmm.
So starting with a specific topic and then breaking down the chapter, saying I'm going to address this, type
Hmm.
that up, I'm going to address that, I'm going to address that. It helped with not getting off track. And then also knowing what my mission was also very important.
Right. And you say something really, I think, important because, and you know me, right? I could be an idea factory, and what many struggle with is procrastination. And that is one, I think, top cure of procrastination is to hold yourself accountable by setting dates. I mean, we could sit all day and discuss what we'd like to do and the wonderful ideas, but they're not worth more than the paper, or the screen that it's written on until you actually execute. So I love that you said, you know what? This is what the idea is, or this is what the title is. This is when it needs to be finished. And it's interesting because you didn't say this. You did not say, this is when I'm going to start.
Mm-hmm.
You said this is when it's got to be done. So you're also the creator of Hustle Faith, right? We didn't talk about that, which I know that there's a season where that's going to be explosive. And when you said this is the date it's going to be done, if you were, let's say, procrastinating, right? You procrastinated your start, that was going to determine the amount of hustle it was going to take you to have to put in order to get that done. you
And I
know
absolutely did that too. And I think that as a chronic procrastinator, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are. I think a lot of people who um, create businesses and have ideas need a lot of time kind of just to sit and think and throw around ideas and kind of waste time. I just honestly think that's how we work. And then, like, when it started getting close to that date, I would say that I wrote 80% of the book in the last week versus all the time I had to actually write it.
Right, right,
So,
right. That's powerful. Um, I Full transparency to my audience is that Nikita is my daughter. And yes, there might be some bias there, but she also knows that I don't play when it comes to authenticity, and that I was not that kind of mother to tell her that something was good, or in my opinion, it had value, or if it was important, if I really didn't believe that. And I am one of those people that pick books up, put them down, pick them up, put them down. But I actually read this book pretty much from cover to cover, almost entirely through. With her, it was just, did you edit it or did you see anything that needs to be changed? But it was captivating. It was important. And I will say this to the audience: I had written a book probably good over 20 years ago called Defeating Depression Spiritually. And
you
I
did?
can't, yeah, yeah.
I didn't
And
even know that.
yep, it was, oh my goodness, over 25, 20, at least more than 25 years ago. And I remember looking for it and I could not and still can't to today's find it. But when I read your book, by the way, which is called Defeating Depression Allegedly, I concluded, well, you know what? No, this is it right there. I mean, it had what I could have said, what I didn't say, right? And it had the most important thing in it. It did not have these elements that needed to be in it. And I just really believe that this is the right timing of it. So, once again, the title of Nikita's Thomas's book is Defeating Depression Allegedly. And so she calls it this an instruction manual as well as a cookbook. But what I love about this book is the subtitle, really, and it reads as a headline. It says, "This victory requires that you fight for your life." Can you talk about like what made you say that? That's like that's a I mean,
Crazy. I really didn't even remember I said like this just goes to show you that I really just do my work and keep my head down because I did not even remember that that was the subtitle. So I'm now having to like have this like nostalgic moment. This book requires you to fight for your life because that's what it is. It is a
mhm,
fight. I think when it comes to any type of mental illness, you have to commit to doing the work because it is in fact work, right?
mhm,
So the depression, oftentimes you do not feel like moving, you do not feel like getting up, you do not feel like you want to stay in the bed all day. Sometimes it's just like you don't get joy out of the things that you used to enjoy. So
mhm.
just life in general without depression is hard.
Wow, wow.
So you add this chemical imbalance to your brain, and I just want them, I want whoever to know that before you even decide to take this journey, that it is going to require a fight for your life. Like I can physically see it. I can physically see the fight that, because you're not going to want to every single day, at least for the first 30 days out the gate. You're not going to want to make decisions and the choices because there are temporary pieces of things that you can do to give you like that temporary satisfaction that's going to want to drive you to make that choice.
Mhm.
But understand that the choices that you make are directly connected to your lifeline. So not only is it a example of how difficult it is for you to make the necessary choices, but it's
Mhm.
also the emphasis on the choices that you make can
Mhm.
actually add to your life or end your life.
Wow, that's pretty compelling when you think about that. When you were talking about the list, let's say I'm going to call it a list of things that you need to do but don't want to do, and then you escape to actions and behaviors that would make you more comfortable to do temporarily, right? Comfortable as a replacement of what you should do. I call that these maladaptive behaviors. Like you said, I should get up in the morning and I should get about my day and look at the tasks that I need to take care of. I should take care of my health, clean up, whatever it is. But these maladaptive, you turn to a form of escapism, to avoid doing what you should do, that which adds and not takes away from your life. In other words, those things that are not killing you to those that are killing you, and you choose then to sleep, or to turn to comfort food, or to turn to some form of, escape to keep from doing the things that actually lend and add to your life. I mean, is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
You,
And it's also fair to say that every choice you make, whether depressed or not, is either adding value or taking value away from your life. But when you
right.
have depression, it is absolutely a fight.
It is a fight. And I think we need to, and I think you've emphasized that from it's crazy from the cover, literally from the cover, you are letting those that are struggling in this area know, listen, this victory. In other words, you are already saying that victory is possible for you, which many who struggle with mental health issues, many times concede to this idea that this is going to be the way that it is for the rest of my life. It's not going to get better, that sort of thing.
And it's
And
called setting your intentions. If you set your intentions on victory, you will have victory. If you set your intentions on defeat, you will absolutely have defeat. So that is my way of
exactly.
forcing or imposing on you to set your intentions for victory.
Right. And you're letting people know from the door that this is a fight. Like this is not playing hopscotch. It's not a game. Like this really you're in the fight for your life. You literally have this looming threat to your life that you actually have to engage in some form of warfare if you expect victory in this area.
Correct.
And I think this book is kind of a guide, to what the rules, first of all, of engagement are, the tools that you need to have in your arsenal. And just really, I found it super practical because I know, and I counsel people all the time with depression, anxiety, and things like that, that everything seems very, very hard, and some have just really accepted that this is my lot in life. And also that one of the things that it just feels like you're running your fingernails across a chalkboard when someone even refers to depression, anxiety, or anything as my depression, my anxiety. It's already that I have now taken possession of this thing, which to me even speaks to how you really see this thing, in terms of hope and in terms of it being a giant and now a part of you, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm before I get into, because I'm anxious to kind of get into some of the sort of the chapters, and it's a fairly quick read. And I love this because you gave no reason, no excuse for anyone to say I don't have time. It was too much to read. I can't focus, on it, or even that it had. I have to have a dictionary because you're also an extremely intelligent woman, but your love for people, triggers you. It's an auto response of yours to make things so simple to people cannot say, I didn't understand, I couldn't follow, I couldn't do it. I mean, it's a fairly quick read, and my goodness, the time we spend looking at TV or staring at social media, by the time you finish, the time that we spend on social media, you will have finished a book that is actually adding not only value to your life, but time to your life. But what honestly inspired you to write this book? I'm anxious to hear, and I believe they need to hear this.
I think it's a couple of things, but I will start with almost like starting with the ending, which is that I've worked with people in depression, with depression. When I was a personal trainer, one of the things I noticed is that I would say, I think after assessing, it ended up being roughly about 85% of the people were on depression medications. I noticed that it didn't matter what race, it didn't matter what
Mhm.
sexuality, it didn't matter what religion. It was just kind of running rampant through all different types of communities because my sociologist brain wants me to connect it to something. It
Right,
wants
right.
me to say that it has to do with socioeconomic status. It wants me, it's always looking for cause and effect and what is the thing. So organically, I started working with people. A lot of times, depression shows up as different things. So someone might say, "Hey, I want to lose weight," because they're thinking weight loss will lead to their happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So the gym is just a place, a clubhouse for sadness. It really is, right? And
Wow.
then the endorphins that's released when you exercise is also something that you gain if you're feeling sad. So for that reason, I was just always around that group of people, and I developed um, this. Let's call it a strategy. I developed this plan, and I saw it work 100% of the time.
Wow.
So 100%. Not there was no person that worked the plan with me that left the program and did not improve their depression at all. There was not there that never happened. 100% of the time, they saw. Um, I wouldn't even say happiness as much as I would say joy. I would say optimism. I would say optimism over everything, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest pivot for someone who's depressed is once their mind starts to shift. There's this sense of hope that
Mhm.
they have.
Mhm.
Um, and once I saw that it was possible for, let's say, my 30 clients or so, I was
Mhm.
just like, I have to get this information out there. I have to share this with as many people as possible. And at that time, this was about 10 years ago. So now more than ever before, especially like post COVID and then the boom of like social media, um, people are suffering more now than ever before. And in addition to that, the boom of antidepressants, and then
Yeah.
doctors constantly prescribing antidepressants and different medications that are causing sadness. So I just feel like so much is going on in the world. And because I've seen the success, the 100% success, I had to
Mhm.
just get the information out there because I also believe that they've overcomplicated things.
Mhm.
Right? Every single thing doesn't need medication. Every single thing doesn't have a complex answer. And sometimes depression can look like this huge mountain, and all it
Mhm.
starts is with like a small step. And I figured if I could break this down into a couple small steps and we just kind of chip away at this mountain step by step, and you just trust that I don't lose.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't lose. So if you work with me and essentially reading the book, following the book as you working with me, you will be victorious also.
Yeah, I believe that too. And the thing that was so tremendous that stood out to me with that book is that it allows us to take charge of our lives. You mentioned like the third parties, like your physicians, or third party things that are prescribed through them, like the medications. And sometimes that is the extent to which a person will actually take action, right? And that is to go, maybe, that's a big maybe to go to the doctor. Not often going to an actual therapist, but will tend sometimes to take the pills, but that's the extent. But what you're showing in this book is you're showing that there is something that you can actually do practically, and even more to show. So you reveal some everyday habits that actually
Free
might
habits.
say that again.
Free habits. Free habits. You
Free.
know,
Go ahead. What
what
do you
do you
mean?
call that? What was I gonna say? Not interest rates, but right now groceries are very expensive. I'm coming up with free habits that you can
Yes.
start to kind of pivot.
Yes, yes. So you're showing like these free habits, right? We're gonna call them free habits that someone, an everyday person, can begin to implement, right? To begin to minimize depressive symptoms, outbreaks that will truly attack this if it's an actual disorder. But you also are showing some everyday habits that are not so free, right? That may actually be the causes, right? The triggers for depression. Like I might, and I don't want to, I'm not going to go too deep into the book because people do need to do this one thing. They need to take a step for themselves, right? And to invest in themselves by buying it, right? So we're not going to put it all here. But when I was reading this, I mean, like I said, I didn't know where to go because there were everyday habits, even habits of my own, that might have been contributing to the depressive thoughts, the feelings of heaviness, the clouds, the whatever in my everyday life that were innocent, that my friends probably do, that are just everyday habits. And so I just want to kind of get into that. So and if you don't, with your permission, I really want to, first of all, um, share the table of contents, right? And then from there, I might have a couple of questions here and there about this. And what I want to do is I also, before I do this, I want to circle back to again to mention your credibility. Once again, you are a sociologist. Um, and you minored also in gender
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 studies.
studies, yeah, and also criminal justice. So you are the statistic woman, right? You understand people, how the mind works, all of that, right? And I can go on and on and on, right? You understand the gender distinctions, struggles, all that, right? But you also, right, are a holistic nutritionist. Not because one day you decided to go up and just grab a book yourself and just start reading about it and then you call yourself that, but you are credentialed. So can you, and we mentioned about being, having an apothecary also. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, right. And so can you even explain really quickly before we get into the chapters? And this is all about credibility because everybody today, not many today, we speak sometimes with authority in subject matter areas that we truly don't have training, and credentials in, right? And you do, you have all of these things. But can you briefly explain what a holistic nutritionist is and what they do?
Um, in a nutshell, a holistic nutritionist's job is to heal people through natural practices,
Mm-hmm.
or empower people to heal through naturopathic or holistic practices. It's also the study of balance. Whereas like the medical care system is more so focused on medicating or regulating disease. We're
And
more
treating
so for
symptoms.
or treating symptoms. I think that's a great way to categorize it. We're more focused on what is the root cause, and we look at it from multiple different facets. So
Mm-hmm.
a doctor might look at just your body, right? Your blood pressure, your reflexes, your blood work, your hormones and stuff like that. Where we might say, okay, um, have you gone through divorce? Which is
Mm-hmm.
huge. Because have you had a death in the family? Or how much sleep have you been getting?
Mm-hmm.
Or, have just, we look at so many different things. What are you eating? Um,
Your lifestyle, trauma, any of
just
those.
literally everything. Trauma, just,
Right.
just kind of just looking at a human is, just a multifaceted individual. So to think of any illness or disease one dimensionally, I just think is just
Mm-hmm.
erroneous. So as a holistic nutritionist, we take a look at every single thing and
Right.
then say, hey, what is the cause? So that's another point to note is that depression is a symptom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what is causing your symptom? Just like you take a medication, what are the you're having the symptom and then they go and treat the symptom. What is causing the symptom of
Mm-hmm.
depression? That's the thing that we have to answer when we kind of treat anything.
That's a very good call out too, because I don't I can't count discussions that I've actually had, with medical professionals. This is not a dig on them at all, but it's just being honest that no one's really looked at or discussed with me the root cause of a thing. Because of course I want to feel better, but if the same habits and the same triggers, right, still exist and I'm ignorant to it, I'm only going to have a repeat of this, and I'm going to also be dependent on something pretty much for the rest of my life unless I get to the root of it. You also bring out something powerful about asking these just lifestyle questions, questions that can affect a person's mental health. And the one thing that really stands out about that to me is that few think of one's mental health and emotional health and sense of lifestyle wellness, inner peace, all those things as something that can contribute to attack when things go wrong, can actually contribute to attacks, right, on your immune systems and systems of your body, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think another thing that separates us is we even look at the spiritual well-being. And
Yes.
like how do you take a look at any part without looking at all of the parts? But
Yes.
when you go and you get your
Yes.
car diagnostic, No matter
Mm-hmm.
if you get your tire fixed or you get an oil change, they do an entire diagnostic.
Sure,
So
sure, sure.
So to make sure one thing is not, if you have an oil leak, let me make sure we check the engine and we check this. I don't know anything about cars, but
Mm-hmm.
like I said, another differentiating factor is that we look at the spiritual well-being because that is a
Mm-hmm.
huge part
Right.
of how we see the world, how we interact with each other. So I just, like I said, I just feel like it's more of a like comprehensive approach of health,
Mm-hmm.
overall health.
Yep, and you're right because we are tripartite beings, as they call it, body, soul, and spirit, and they have to be in alignment. And even me being a representing the religious community as well, I see a lot of imbalance there, where there's a lot of us sort of, we stick to our habits of going to church, maybe reading the Bible, maybe prayer and things like that, but severely neglect emotional health and physical health. And I was raised in the church, and that those two areas were very neglected and not talked about, and I think that as spiritual leaders, it's incomplete ministry when we don't inspire people to come into balance. My sister, I have my baby sister, we joke about this. She talks about fasting, and she said that, you're casting out devils, but you can't seem to turn your plate down. And that was a call out on just the lack of discipline, that I'm highly spiritual, but I don't have self-control. And even though I may think that that's even possible, it's not. Something is off somewhere. We're not as balanced as we think we are, when it seems like we're high spiritually, but we don't really pay much attention to our health. In fact, it's not important to us. Rest is not important to us. The fact is that the alignment, they work together, and is if one is off, it's going to throw everything out of balance. So I'm so happy that you are calling attention to that, and even the importance of, when assessing someone, understanding them as a whole person, body, soul, and spirit. You say this a lot, and I'm telling you, parts of this has changed my life, and even in terms of how I think about wellness. And you talked about the body, and in this book, the body's, ability to heal itself, and that certain condition, you need to set up those conditions so that it can heal itself. And I see holistic nutrition. I see its value in that. I mean, do you want to kind of add to that, because you're the
That's my favorite
expert?
thing. The body has the power to heal itself as long as you provide it with the proper conditions. What I think is interesting, I kind of want to circle back just a little bit because even in your explanation of spirituality, you mentioned fasting. Fasting is listed as one of the top 5 ways to improve depression symptoms.
Wow. Wow.
So just being able to exercise self-control in that aspect
Mm-hmm.
will release positive endorphins into your brain. So I thought that that was interesting. And I don't read the Bible for the intention of regurgitating information. So I don't necessarily remember the specifics, but I do know
Mm-hmm.
that in John they talk about the enemy's attack on balancement.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere, I don't know if it's 1 through 5, 5, 1, 6, 7, it's within the first 10 because I usually get bored after the first 10 and then I move on to a new chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But they talk about the attack on balance.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, when you talk about the body has the power to heal itself as long as you provided the right conditions, the biggest thing is making sure we balance all of the parts. All
Mm-hmm.
of the parts, meaning rest,
Mm-hmm.
meaning what you eat. They consider the gut the second brain because
Mm-hmm.
what you eat directly affects the
Wow.
chemicals in your brain. It directly affects whether your brain is inflamed or not.
Mm-hmm.
So balance, you've heard of a balanced diet, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually writing my newsletter on the USDA's balanced diet because that was also completely rigged by the food industries. It was actually
Mm-hmm.
paid for by Kraft, Purdue, and all that. So just re-understanding what a balanced diet and a balanced lifestyle is, making sure you spend time with God. And spending time with God, if you don't enjoy reading the Bible, God is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
God is outside with the birds and nature, and it's in prayer, it's in meditation, it's just making sure, even if you have like your a little chart where you put mind, body, soul, spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and you make sure you check off one thing in each of those areas that you're doing on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure you're exercising balance.
Right. Right. It's interesting that you talked about the fact that God is everywhere, right? He's not confined to a specific space, and that because some people do struggle with the Bible and they struggle with understanding it, and I know people that have had this problem, and it was after the spiritual growth and development that they were able to then return to the Bible, and then were able to understand. So they understood God more so outside the scriptures first. Like you mentioned, creation. The Bible says that the invisible attributes of God are revealed in creation. And I know you're always on me about getting out of the house, sitting in the sun, and it's nothing more beautiful than getting out in creation and just having this sense of the Lord, and He meets you there, where the birds are singing, and just watching creation, mountain climbing, walking, just singing. I mean, out many times our experience of the Lord may actually happen first outside of the scriptures, the meeting of a person, who is a believer, becoming really totally fascinated with nature and things like that, So I love how you mentioned that, not at all discounting the scriptures, but you talk of the many ways that people can encounter the Lord, and that just speaks to even that balance spiritually that needs to be not only developed but a necessary part of that alignment that we're talking about. And
It's
so
also,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry to cut you
No,
off. Go
no,
ahead.
no, no, no. I want you to go because I was going to
I was
shift.
going to say it's also a person, me, I'm a person who's done over 10,000 assessments, meaning I've sat down with over 10,000 people. I have to recognize, or maybe even we have to recognize, that places like the church and the Bible is very traumatic for many people. So if we sort of uh, only say that spirituality can be found in a church, or spirituality can only be found in
Hmm.
reading the Bible, people have been traumatized by those things. So I just feel like when you kind of open it up a little bit,
Hmm.
um, where people have more access, we can kind of walk them back to the Bible at some point. But I just feel like we have to acknowledge that. To me, as a holistic nutritionist, I have to acknowledge that churches, or even places of worship in general, not just churches, are a place where people experience their trauma. So going there isn't always a position or a place that represents safety.
Hmm.
So for me, I say I like to provide options, like say, hey, listen, you can find spirituality everywhere. Hey, God is everywhere. So they don't feel like
Hmm.
God has forgotten about them, or they don't have access.
Or if they don't
And
go to
I
church.
need them to feel like they have that access.
Right, or that if they don't go to church, you're not a regular church goer, then somehow that makes them an unbeliever or a bad
Or
person.
yeah,
Be,
insufficient in any
yeah,
way, which obviously they
yeah,
don't need
yeah,
help
yeah, yeah.
with, with that.
Right, right. And the church building is not. That's not the rule that the church building is going to be the first place that you are born again. That's not necessarily true. It is really church membership and attendance is really something that people engage in, at a certain point in their walk because they realize that that's a requirement of the Lord, that we do assemble together. But the question is who, where, what, and even the readiness for that matter, because a lot of people did not going to make that move until they really feel that sense of safety, and not safety through my talking or even this program, but I think the Lord will tend to speak to people and he will lead them, and the emphasis for us is to encourage a relationship with him, right? Which there's no one place, right, that we can say this is only where God can be found. I think that's really essentially what you're saying, but you are saying you need him. You do need him. You cannot do this without him. And I like that you are opening up the world. What is your favorite? Remember your favorite scripture when you were growing up about the earth
The earth is the
being
Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world
the
and they that dwell therein. Psalms 24.
Yep, and
I,
she remembers that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and the world and they that dwell therein. You want to find him? He's in the earth, and so I love that as well. But let's get to the book, because you know me, and once you get a preacher talking, we start trying to break down the theology and the this, and then I'm trying to correct you and or expand on what you're saying, that kind of thing. But I want to get to this because this is a gold mine, a gold mine. So the chapters in this book. What is depression exactly? This is just for the viewers. Here are the chapters. Again, very simple. And I love that there are just 7, right? Unless you changed it. There are 7. I love that. And you know how y'all folks in the numerology, I'm not, but some of y'all go,
get
ooh, it's
into it.
7, right? But we're not going to say it. So 7 chapters. What is depression exactly? Number 2, Chapter 2, never and always, depressive toxic vocabulary. And we're going to touch on that. Chapter 3, happy foods. What foods to increase while battling depression. Chapter 4, sad foods. What foods to stay away from while battling depression. Chapter 5, lifestyle medicine. Chapter 6, the monetization of the healthcare system. That's a whole nother talk for a whole nother day.
That could
But
have been a
then,
whole nother book.
yes, a whole nother book. And then chapter 7, you titled it Cooking Up Some Happiness, Recipes and Implementation. With that chapter 7 right there, I read that and was like, oh my goodness. Because another myth is that being healthy is the food's going to be boring, you're not going to enjoy it, oh, it's going to be bland. And no, 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 no. That is definitely untrue, a myth. And I'm actually getting more and more engaged in healthy eating, and I am more appreciative of food today. And it's a joy knowing that what I'm putting in my body is healthy. But I'm going to start with chapter 1, and I'm just going to quote a couple of things. Um, in under what is depression exactly, I quote you. You said one of the first ways of defeating depression is acknowledging that many things are out of your control. Therefore, it is not your responsibility to obsess over things that you cannot impact or control. Secondly, worrying about the past or the future is the grandest mismanagement of your energy. Did you want to add to that? Why, or even why you thought that was significant at all?
Well,
Especially that last sentence.
I read once that anxiety is an obsession with the future and that depression is an obsession with the past.
Hmm.
Um, we have we have to completely disengage from the things we have no control over.
Yes.
And we have to have the faith that life happens for us, not to us. And because the past is behind us and we have no ability to change our history, spending time on thinking about what ifs, and even obsessing over the things that has happened to you negatively or otherwise waste your energy on your present and what your future could potentially be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's pretty simple. I can't really get any more simple than that.
And you go on to say in your book, it says it doesn't serve you. In a nutshell, you said it doesn't serve you. Therefore, you must dismiss the responsibility for the things that you have no control over. This is easier said than done. However, it's doable. And if you believe in a higher power like myself, I like to think. I do not know what tomorrow holds, but I do know who holds tomorrow.
I'm a
The under
great writer.
You are right. Listen to you. There you go. The understanding that life happens for you and not to you takes a little faith and a lot of consistent practice. And so this is powerful stuff. You go on to say, take note, and I love this quote about stinking thinking. You said, take note, negative thoughts or stinking thinking is what I like to call it. These things will inevitably come. They are like the weeds in your garden. No matter how much fertilizer, water, and sunshine we give it, there will inevitably be an uprooting that needs to take place. It must happen quickly, aggressively, and consistently. And that's powerful. Why quickly? Why aggressively? Why
If you, I
consistently?
mean, anyone who's had a garden, and if you haven't had one, you have to try to understand this analogy. But if you allow the weeds to grow, they will take over your entire garden. And
Ooh,
essentially, that's what depression is. If you don't, when you see that first weed, you have to snatch it up and get rid of it immediately because it will create friends. And those
yes.
friends will start to take out some of your good fruit
Mm-hmm.
um, immediately. So a lot of times we ruminate, right? So you have that thought, and that thought
Mm-hmm.
turns into a thought, and that thought turns into a bunch of thoughts, and those thoughts create emotion, and it creates chemical responses in your body and things like that. So what I offer to you is, as soon as you have the thought, say,
Yes.
no,
Yes. Yes.
have that new thought. Choose the thought. You have the
Exactly.
ability to choose. You may not be able to choose the thought that popped into your brain, but you do have the ability to uproot the thought immediately as soon as you have it. Recognize it, identify it, take it, rip it out,
Mm-hmm.
replace it with a new thought immediately. You think, here's an example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nobody wants, nope, I
Mm-hmm.
look good. Somebody gonna want me. Let me
Mm-hmm.
go do my hair. Let me go take me a nice bath. Let me go.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally that simple. I don't want, I don't, the whole purpose and the simplification of this book is to keep it simple.
Right.
When the
Right.
thought comes, remove it immediately. Replace
Immediately.
it with another one. Guess what? If another thought comes right after that, you remove it again.
Right.
It's not this thing, again, this is the work I'm talking about.
Right.
It's not a thing where you remove the thought and you just hope that the next thought is going to be a positive thought. That's
Mm-mm.
just not reality. You've been practicing this depression likely for some time now. So you are in practice of negative thinking. You are in practice of beating yourself up. You're in practice of rehearsing things that you cannot change. So you have to form a new habit. That new habit is uprooting those negative thoughts, removing them, and then replacing them because empty space is a dangerous place.
Yeah. Say that again.
Empty
Empty,
space is a dangerous place.
empty
So
space
you
is a
have
day.
to give it a
Mm-hmm.
new thing, whether that be to say a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the amount of times, but it's something crazy like 37 times you have to say a thing for it to kind of start to take root. So you want to go with that number 37. I love the number seven. Say it 37 times. And it gets easier and easier as
Mm-hmm.
time goes on. I don't want to say each time because I don't want you to say, oh, I did it 3 times and here
Mm-hmm.
I am still thinking. I don't want you to overanalyze it. But let's say do it for 6 months.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
time will help you not have to deal with it as much and so frequently.
Right. I love that you say you have to, first of all, you have to, this thing has to be immediate. You need to immediately uproot to remove it and then make sure you're replacing it with something. You said something else, that danger of letting it stay, is that it spreads and then it affects your good crop and your
Mm-hmm.
good fruit. And how often do we see someone that may have been ruminating for a while, to where now depression has become a disorder to some degree, but what is often buried and hidden, and people are even blinded to see it again in your life is because it's now taken over and it's completely not necessarily destroyed, the good parts of you, but definitely it's crowded it out, and it's trapped those good things, and so that you can't spring forth your fruit, the goodness in your life, your talent, your gifts, your dreams, your visions, your joy, all of your positive attributes are being choked out by these weeds, that we allow to actually grow.
One of the
So,
things that drives
mhm,
me crazy is, no, actually, let me take that back. It doesn't drive me crazy, but it's kind of puzzling to me because it actually
mhm,
doesn't drive me crazy at all. I want it to
mhm,
be accurate.
mhm,
Is when people post on social media about all of the family members and friends that don't support them.
right.
And I say that, and the reason why this makes sense in this moment is because you are literally allowing the enemy to rob you of your joy, of the success in your accomplishments by focusing all your energy on the people who didn't show up for you.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
have to choose differently. The moment you are being successful or you're happy about a thing and you allow that little moment to creep in who didn't show up for you, remove that immediately. Take that
Immediately.
and throw that over there and continue to think about how you showed up for you. Ain't even
Right.
I don't even care about who showed up for you. I'm talking about how you showed up for yourself and
Mhm.
how you will
Mhm.
continue to show up for yourself. And
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
happens if you continue to show up for yourself? What would that look like rather
Right.
than thinking about the people or the
Mhm.
friends who didn't show up?
Right.
Completely get
Right.
rid of that thought.
And it's also how deception occurs in a person, that when their focus is always and only on who didn't show up for them, who didn't do something for them, and even all the negative things, instead of focusing on who did, like you said, the fact that you did for yourself and others did for you, and so forth. It can bring about a deception to where people start to believe nobody loves me, nobody supports me, and all the other lies that come with that. And so there are so many reasons to uproot, like you said,
You ever had
immediately.
somebody tell you that nobody shows up for them while you showing up for them? Why you there listening to them?
Yep, yep. You actually bring out that a point that I was going to make, how unfair it actually is to those who
Mm-hmm.
do. And then to be on the phone with them. I'm sure you've been in a conversation where someone is telling you, like, nobody did this for me, nobody came, nobody whatever, nobody loves me, and they're actually talking to someone, right, who does. And there's the delusion and the deception, of not immediately hijacking, breaking into those thought conversations that are going on. And like you said, up immediately uproot, immediately discard and replace, and really start to get into the habit of always seeing, the best picture, the best circumstance, the best, holding on to the best belief, thinking positively all the time, just replacing, removing at the root and replacing. And you got to get to the root, because if you just kind of cut off the branches, that root system is still there. You've got to get to the core of that thing and rip it completely out, get it out of your vocabulary, begin to pinpoint and talk. That's why in the book that I wrote, which is not the topic of today, there's a chapter that, or a section that deals with their thought helpers, where you also so begin to sort of log your thinking and to begin to look at the repeating themes, but it helps you to kind of identify, where there are weaknesses in thought, where there are poor habits, things you need to change. You start to see the root. Here's what the root of this is. And like you said, you got to pull it up, and you got to do it immediately. The longer it takes, I think, the harder and the more difficult it is, because now you formed a habit, and that habit has to be broken. But again, like you said in the top of your book, this victory, is going to be the fight of your life. So
A
what were you
lot of
thinking? Because it looked
times
like you were
those
thinking.
thoughts, I was gonna say a lot of times those thoughts take root. Again, this is the how it take root. You had the thought of who didn't show up for you,
Hmm.
and then you're breaking your neck to show up for others,
Hmm. Yep.
people pleasing, so that you feel seen
Hmm.
by this person who was never going to show up for you in the first place. And then you're
Hmm.
feeling worse. And here we are. in
Right.
this warp, this
Right.
hamster wheel
Yeah.
of how you allowed one inaccurate
Hmm.
negative thought to take root, and it is
Right.
completely changing your path.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Um, and so I'm going to move from this to another subject. It seems like a logical move, and that's the chapter where you speak to the terms never and always, and you refer to it as a depressive, toxic vocabulary. It kind of speaks for itself, but I don't know if do you want to take on that for a second? You kind of did a little bit, I think, but the term you are speaking about the phrase, the terms never and always, and you call it a depressive, toxic vocabulary.
It just really, the reason why I put this in the book is because I wanted people to start to identify their depressive thoughts and hearing the words, no one ever supports me, or I'm never being supported, or I always get I always get left out. Inaccurate. You don't
Mm-hmm.
always get that left out.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on one second. Can I hold on?
Yeah, sure. Okay, we're back. We had to tend to the fur babies. So we're back to discussing the negative terms, never or as you call it, these the toxic getting rid of the toxic depressive vocabulary.
Language, yeah. I just want people to, the purpose of the chapter is I want people to be able to or begin to identify when they are not thinking clearly.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a thought that says, they never show up for me, I'm always the person that's not liked, never this, always that. As soon as you hear that language, just know it is, I'm 99% sure it is an inaccurate thought, and it is time to uproot that thought and replace it, at least replace it with accuracy. If you can't replace it with optimism, replace it with accuracy and say, well, who has shown up for me? Let's
Yes.
start with myself. I showed up for myself.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
it's more so about that, identifying the negative language and being able to say, oh, I know this is inaccurate because as soon as I hear these two words, that means I'm not thinking clearly. Maybe I need to get
Right.
some rest. Maybe I need to think something different.
Right. This has been a very rich conversation. I mean, I could go on, folks, there's a section in where she talks about the importance of therapy, not just the negative stigmatism behind it, but she really delves in how super important therapy is. And then she speaks to also the happy and the sad foods, but I'm not going to pull that out of her in this interview. You're just gonna have to get the book. It is definitely weighty, it's practical, and it shows that you are not helpless. You are not helpless. You're not invalid in your challenge, with depression and even anxiety, that there are everyday things that you can do as even first steps, building habits to really get your life back. And so you have to get the book, and I've actually put the links to ordering it in the description section, of the channel. So all you got to do is take that plunge, click that link, order that book. Very quickly, I also want to call attention to God's Green Earth RX, which Nikita is the founder of, and this is also a company, right? That, in fact, let me just be quiet and let you tell us about God's Green Earth RX, because my understanding is that you actually have some supplements that are natural herbal that can assist with a variety of things, right? But can you talk a little bit? It doesn't even have to just be about mental health, but I want you to maybe spend a minute to tell us about what's God's Green Earth and how it can benefit them, of course, for depression, anxiety, overall wellness, that sort of thing. And I'm also going to put that information in there, and I definitely encourage you to visit that website. You know, I mean, what's there is so helpful and powerful that even a lot of big businesses even reach out to Nikita to actually order and have her put together wellness kits that they give out as right as gifts to their employees that are returning. Yeah, their employees that have been returning from working remotely into, an in-person atmosphere. But tell us about God's Green. It's God's Green Earth RX, and you can visit godsgreenearthrx.com. But can you tell us, sort of in closing, a little bit about that? And then that's it.
Okay, God's Green Earth RX essentially is a holistic resource for plant-based medicine. So we take a look at medicine and we define it a little differently. It's something that we use to promote healing. So, for example, instead of maybe taking a supplement, we might have a holistic candle. So one of our candles is called Breathe, because one of the best
Breathe.
things,
Did you
one
say?
of
I'm sorry, I didn't catch
breathe.
you. Breathe, like breathing, right?
Yeah, like inhale,
Mm-hmm.
exhale,
Mm-hmm.
breathe. One of our holistic candles is called Breathe, and it is made with holistic and essential oils that are meant to relax your nervous system and release serotonin in the body. But it's also a reminder that the number one thing you can do for anxiety is to take a breath. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times when things get challenging, just think about when you go to the gym. When you go
Mm-hmm.
to the gym and if you're working out, you realize that because you're under tension, you hold your breath. Well, the same thing happens when you're under stress. What stress is I believe is upwards of 90% of cancer is activated by stress.
Mm-hmm.
So it is just a constant reminder, take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you're inhaling the smells, you're actually relieving yourself of anxious feelings. The other things that we have is your traditional stuff. I guess there are, I don't even know if they're traditional now, but they weren't when we started. But we have things like sea moss capsules. One of my favorites, actually something that I take on a daily basis, is our it's called Mushroom Magic. It's essentially a 14 adaptogenic blend. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what an adaptogen is, essentially it is a different herbs. They're actually usually fostered in a space that has a lot of stress. So they release natural endorphins to make them actually healing for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not many brands out there that have multiple adaptogens in one. Usually you can get ashwagandha or you can get reishi mushroom or you can get a different one, but we kind of combine them all together as something that I take on a daily basis to reduce my cortisol levels, which is the cause of gaining weight, lack of sleep, not releasing melatonin, not releasing serotonin in the brain. So as a daily supplement, just dealing with life, I believe that's one of my favorites, just to manage stress, which I think is a key factor in disease prevention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we have many different things. We even have some merch on there and things like that. So you can also get an assessment, which I strongly, strongly recommend. Like I said, I've been doing this for years. And I like to start with intentions in the assessment, which is I get on the phone and I say, hey, what would you like to accomplish in this? We write it down and then we break out a plan on how you accomplish that goal. So that might be depression for you. That might be weight loss for you. That might just be general joy for you, or whatever that thing is that you feel like is unattainable. We take a holistic approach to it, and we map you out a plan, a lot of which you have to do the work, as I said.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes we supplement. Honestly, supplementation nowadays is kind of mandatory because our food system is so corrupt. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I said this already, but your grandmother's banana is not your banana. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, your grandmother's orange is not your orange. The amount of calcium that your grandmother got in her orange, you would actually need to eat 7 oranges just to get 10% of the nutrients from that orange. So I believe if you're going to be a person that attains homeostasis or balance, you have to be supplementing with something or eating a lot of food, which
Right.
I personally can't do, but maybe you can. I don't know.
And by my grandmother's orange, you're referring to back then, way back when, years
Yeah,
and years
50
ago.
plus years.
Yes.
50
So
plus years.
so the oranges back then are not it's nutritional. They don't contain the same nutrition that
Well,
the
most of them are
oranges.
genetically modified. And so here the fun
Oh.
fact is genetically modified foods. There's a spray that they spray on the foods that stops something called, I want to say it's called tryptophan. I know it starts with a TR, but don't quote me on that. In order for you to create serotonin, you need the tryptophan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if
Right.
you're eating GMO fruits, vegetables, foods, mind you, a lot of the things packaging now, turn it around on the back, it says genetically modified or bioengineered.
Mm-hmm.
When you see that, just know the thing that they're using to create that is suppressing the creation of serotonin, which means you will be less happy. So if you are already depressed, you don't want to eat genetically modified foods, and you
Right.
absolutely want to be supplementing with an adaptogen. Some of my favorites are, of course, Mushroom Magic that can be found on godsgreenearthrx.com. But if you have a Whole Foods, go to Whole Foods, get rhodiola. That's one of my favorites. And then in the book, I actually list, I don't know how many, but I list at least five that you should be taking on a daily basis that will at least help you do the work.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, listen, my goodness, where do I end? You have prepared us. You've given away, I should say, so much information today. And I can't stress enough that the folks definitely grab it's actually an ebook, so we don't even have to wait in the mail, right? To get access to this book, Defeating Depression Allegedly. In the it's an instruction manual and a cookbook. She in the end, she is providing some of these recipes, and definitely remembering that subtopic, which to me is explosive. This victory requires that you fight for your life. She also left us with another powerful resource in God's Green Earth RX, Robert X-ray, godsgreenearthrx.com, which is her website. I'm going to put all that information below on this channel so that you have it at your fingertips. Get the book, visit the website, play this video over and over again so that you don't miss the details, especially even at the ending when she discussed where nutrition is today and the definite critical importance of supplementation, because a salad is not just a salad as you expect anymore. An apple is not your grandmom's apple, an orange is not your grandmom's orange, and you may very well be living with a malnourished brain, a very which is a sick brain, which exposes us to many things: Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety, so many things that we're struggling with may be due to malnourishment. And then, of course, she left us with even a lifestyle changes that we have to make concerning how we think, how we have to be proactive when the stinking thinking, sneaks in, ways of seeing things, how our habits have to change, so there's so much. And listen, she just gave us what I call a drive-by. She stayed on the outskirts of what this book entails. And again, I cannot emphasize enough. Visit godsgreenearthrx.com and you will also have access to some of the products that she discussed today. Nikita, thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been wanting to put this together for some time. Go ahead. You want to share something
I
last?
just wanted to note that when you order the book, I make it so you can define your price.
Oh, wow.
Every no one agreed with me. No one wanted me to do that. They said,
I
"Listen,
don't
I
either,
watched
but go
you
ahead.
work. I watched you, blood, sweat, and tears. This took away a lot of my time, but it was something that I absolutely had to do. And I knew that I wanted to make it accessible for you and for you to pay whatever you can afford. There's a suggested retail price of $21. But if you don't have $21 to give, I am willing to give the information for whatever it is that you can afford, because I would never want money to stand in the way of your healing.
Now that's very generous of you, and you're right. I probably would have said no, because I'm a big believer in people, giving value, to their products, or their products have value, and I really strongly believe that people have to want to invest in themselves. But I totally respect, appreciate, and even love the fact that you didn't want anybody left out, because truly there also are people who truly cannot afford it. There are people that who can afford it that will still not invest in themselves, but there are people who definitely cannot, and I'm proud that you would offer it to them at a price that they can designate and afford. And again, I'm going to put the link to the book Defeating Depression Allegedly, right? Did I say that right? Defeating Depression Allegedly. And also the link to godsgreenearthrx.com. Again, I'm going to say thank you to Nikita Thomas. This was a very enjoyable and valuable discussion on today, and rich. I know that there's so much more that we could have covered and discussed. And so I'm pretty certain that when you can carve out the time, we will definitely do this again. We did not mention that Nikita is also a restaurateur. She owns a restaurant called Rooted AF, which, am I saying that right? Which is actually a vegan restaurant.
Conscious vegan food.
She calls
Conscious.
it, yes, she calls it conscious vegan food. And I am not a vegan, but I tell you what, I will get in my car and come to Rooted. It is the best food that I have honestly ever eaten. And her customers, many of her customers are not vegan, right? But when they come there, I
It's
mean,
a 90%, 90
yeah,
some odd percent or not vegan.
are not vegan. And you're
It's
fine.
funny.
That's why. And she mentioned earlier on that people are trying to turn her into a chef, because she comes up with these recipes. She's she puts them on the menu. A lot of love, a lot of care goes into it, because she wants to attract people to healthy eating, and people don't want to feel like they are being punished to eat right. The food's got to taste good, right? So again, thank you once again. I've said it 1,000 times. I probably can't say it more. Thank you so much for taking out the time to visit with us today. And once again, to our viewers, please take a look in the description area to get access to the book, as well as to God's Green Earth RX. Nikita, thank you so much. Did you want to have last words before we say goodbye to our viewers?
No, just thank you for having me. And also, you can find me on Instagram at I am Holistic Nick. I am HOLISTIC. I think I spelled it holistic. Well, you know how to spell holistic. Nick, NIK.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much it.
Great. And I'll put all of that will be down below as well. Guys, continue to tune in to Truths to Live By. Please share, share, share. Do not keep all this great information to yourself. As they say, pay it forward. The Lord bless you and keep you until we meet again.